Alright guys, here with another video. In this video we're going to be making it where the squirt can actually fire a projectile towards the bottom of the screen. Alright, so let's get started on this. Let's go to the squirt scene, go to the animation player, and let's take a look at the fire animation. Alright, here is my firing animation. And I'm looking for a point to place a marker to shoot a projectile. So I'm going to find the point to where the squirt is moved into such a position that I think, okay, the projectile is ready to be fired. And I'm going to pick that spot, which I'm going to say is somewhere right about there. Alright, so this is the fire animation, and I'm going to use this pose or this position to give him a firing point for where the object or projectile will shoot. I need to mark this point in this animation, so I'm going to add a to the main node, I'm going to add a marker 3D. Hit create. I'm going to call this marker the fire point. And this is just a point in 3D space. Oops, he moved right there. Alright, this is just a point in 3D space that where I want the projectile to appear from. So on this little point you can see, or this point here, I want to put it where that spot is, maybe a good spot for the projectile to be shot from. Somewhere right there, I don't know, something like that. You can put it pretty much anywhere. Maybe I should leave it at 0 on the z-axis. But I want the projectile to get fired somewhere around there to get created right there. So there is now my point that I'm going to use. I'm looking at these numbers here. I'm going to use 0. I'm going to do -3. I'm just going to use a nice round number just because. Come on here. -3. Come on, do it. There we go. Just so I have some round numbers. All right, this point is going to be where the projectile comes out of the enemy, or it gets created at that point. I don't really want it to get created way up here. Just pretty much, that's pretty much the lowest point for my character. All right. Okay, so I've got a fire point. That's a marker 3D. Now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to add something, a point that basically marks when in the animation that fire should take place. So mine's somewhere around here. And I'm going to click on add track. And the track I want to do is call a method. So I'm going to click on that, call a method. And your methods are stored in your script. So that's going to come from this top node right there. That's where my script is. So I'll hit OK. Now I have a functions track here. This is a track, meaning like I want to call a function that is inside of this script. Let's take a look inside this script, and we're going to need to make a function in here that will actually fire a projectile. So I'm going to add a function here, and I'm going to call this function fire projectile, just like that. And what I like to do is I like to start off with just regular print statements. So I'll just say print. I'll put the name of, I've started doing this just so I can be really clear on who is saying this. So Squirt00 is calling the function fire projectile. And the function was called. Okay, so this is just my troubleshooting. Alright, so there's my troubleshooting steps. I've got my fire projectile function. It doesn't actually do anything just yet, but I've created it. I'm going to hit save. Also up here at the top, I'm going to grab a hold of this fire point. Just basically going to get it set to where I can actually use it when I need it. So I'll say @onReady var, and I'll call it fire point. And what do I need to do? I just need to get this node. So I'll say get node and then fire point. Gets the fire point node. That's all this does. So I'll grab this and I'll put it here. I'm not going to use it just yet. This is our marker 3D to tell us where to put the projectile. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. There we go. Let's go back to 3D mode here. And I saved it. Make sure you hold Control and press S to save. All right. At this point in time, right there, I need to add a function. So I'm going to right click here and I'll say insert key. And the key that I want to insert, you'll see inside of these methods which function you can call or you'd want to call. And as long as you saved it, you will see the fire projectile method right there. So I'll hit open. And there is that key right there for the fire projectile. So at the point in your animation where it gets right there at that low point, it's going to do all this animation stuff with the bones. And then right when it also reaches right there, it's going to call that method fire projectile right there at that one point. All right, let's save this. Let's verify that that's actually working. If it is working, then this print statement will print. So let's go to our 3D scene, and we'll press play. And then, boom, fire projectile. The function was called squirt 00 fire projectile. The function was called. So anytime these little guys play that fire animation, the fire projectile will get called at that specific point. So good, that's working perfectly. We've got a lot of printouts coming on here, so that's not the best. Let's see if we can figure out where some of these are getting printed from and maybe comment some of them out. They're probably getting printed in the squirt thing here. Yeah, so right there under the ready, print the animations. Comment that one out. We'll go ahead and leave this one for a moment. Now we need an actual projectile to fire. We've got the function. Let's go ahead and make a projectile. So I'm going to make a really simple projectile. I'm going to create a new scene. This is going to be a 3D scene. And I am looking for just a regular 3D node. And I want to call this simple projectile. Like that. This scene is going to have a mesh instance, and this I'll just leave it there, that name right there. And you know what? I will add a area 3D. And I'm going to call this the detection zone. And I'll go ahead and give it a mesh. So the mesh, I'm clicked on mesh. I'll come over here and I'll say add a sphere. I'm not going to do anything to this. I'm just going to leave it just like it is. This needs to be really simple. So in my detection zone, I'm going to also add a 3D a collision shape 3D. And that's just going to be the simple sphere shape. And I'm going to make absolutely no changes to that. So I have a simple projectile now. We're going to need to save this. So I'll do Control S. And I want to put this in the scenes folder. And I'm going to make another folder because it's very likely we're going to have multiple projectiles. So I'll say projectiles. Okay. And I'll go ahead and save that in the scenes projectiles folder. All right. Now let's add a simple script to this guy. So I'll click up here under simple projectile and I'll add a script. I do not want to put this in the scenes folder. I want to put this in my scripts folder and I'm going to make a new folder for projectiles. And it'll just leave it the name simple projectile. Open and create. At the top here, this is going to be simple projectile. And what's it for? It's this is just the first test projectile to be fired from the squirt. We're gonna I am gonna add a ready function. We'll just keep going from there, and then we're gonna give it some movement. We're gonna have a couple variables up here at the top. We're gonna do var speed, and we'll set this to, let's just give it something like, I don't know, -10, because I think negative numbers in the Y are downwards. I think so. We'll find out. Negative numbers move us down, move us downwards. That's what we hope. If not, we'll fix it. I make all kinds of mistakes, but I'm thinking Y negative will take us downwards. We need the process function for just moving us, and then we'll say we're going to move our projectile on the y-axis, and we're going to use our speed times delta. So this is just a really simple move us downwards. And then we don't want the projectile to last forever. So I'll say boundary is equal to -5. So if projectile gets lower than -5 on the y-axis, remove it. Okay, so this is our how low do you want the projectile to get. If you go to this 3D test world here, you'll notice at the test environment at the bottom here is 0. So if you go below that, you're going to be going down below Y. Our floor is right at 0. So we're just saying if the projectile makes it to -5, that's when we want to remove it from the game. We don't want them to be there forever. So we're going to make a function that just removes the projectile. So function remove projectile, which is this. And when we first start out, we're going to want to know that the projectile was actually removed. So we'll say projectile was moved. All right, so we want to check and make sure. We'll say if self.global position.y is less than our boundary, that means the projectile has gotten too low and we want to call the function remove the projectile. So this is just checking to see, are we too low? If so, remove. I'll just say call this function. And then this one right here, move the projectile downwards. Okay, so we've got a movement speed, our boundary on the Y. This ready function is not really used. Every frame of the game, move the projectile downwards. If we get too low, call the remove projectile function. And this will also tell us if it's been removed. Let's go ahead and save this. So now our projectile has some really simple code, and it's just a sphere. We're not even using our detection zone yet. Let's go back to our squirt. And at the top, we need access to that projectile. So I'll call this simple projectile is equal to preload. And preload just basically means get ready to use this thing. The thing we're preloading is that simple projectile. So this preloads our simple projectile. All right. One thing I do not like doing is not having a good parent for the projectile. I don't like adding new objects that are bullets to the object itself, to the parent right there. So I'm going to come to this 3D scene here, and I'm going to add a holder for that projectile. So I'll come up here and I'll add a regular 3D node, and this is going to be my projectile holder. Like that. Projectile holder. I'm also going to use this scene unique name. I don't think it's useful just yet, but there it is. I'm going to move it up as well. I'll put it right here. I'm going to move my environment down. I'll hide this and this. So there's our projectile holder. All right. Let's go back to, I'll save this scene. So we in the test world, we have one that's called projectile holder. I'm going to get that node. And in the squirt, we'll say, what is this going to be called? This is going to be called, cheating over here. Give me 1 second. We want to get, I think we want to get the level holder. Okay, right here. Here we go. We're going to do on, you know what? I'll just copy and paste it because I can do that. There we go. Projectile holder is get node or null. This get node or null, what it will do is it will make sure that the object actually exists. If it doesn't exist, it will not. It'll return null. So it kind of helps with keeping errors if a node doesn't exist. But there's that. All right, so let's come down here to our projectile holder, and we'll say now we're going to make it where it can actually fire the projectile. So we'll say new projectile is equal to simple projectile dot instantiate, and then we'll take this guy, we'll say projectile holder dot add child. I'm not sure if I used the call deferred or not. I would think I did. Yeah, I did. So let's do call deferred. let's do it like this. So projectile holder, call deferred, add child, new projectile. So you'll notice it's going into this projectile holder right there. That projectile holder is that thing we just added right at the beginning. And all it's, I'm spacing this stuff for you guys so y'all can see everything. Okay, so it adds the projectile, and then we also want to set its position to the right spot. And that would look something like this. So we're saying go to the new projectile and give it some settings, but give it some time to get ready. Set its global position. That's basically move the object to the right point. Move it to fire point's global position. So that's that point that we added to him. So when this function fire projectile is called, it will create a new bullet. Then it will add it to the projectile holder, which is in this test world scene, which is right there. And it's call deferred basically means just wait for the game if the game's being slow. Then we'll also tell that new projectile, okay, now that you're on the scene, you need to be placed at the correct position. So make these settings, set these settings whenever you're ready. So basically just wait for the game because the game could be slow. And so there, I'll move that out of the way. And set your position, set your global position to wherever the fire point is, and that's that fire point right there. All right, so I know this function is going to get called. Let's see if we made any mistakes. I'll go to test world and I'll play test world and fire projectile. There we go. We've got a bunch of projectiles getting fired, and then over here on the side you'll see it says removed projectile. That happens when the projectile gets too low. So in that function, or in that animation, whenever that function gets called, it will add a projectile to the scene, and the projectiles will move downward until they get too low. I'm going to comment out these little print statements. So I'll comment out that one. And then I'm also going to comment out this remove projectile because I know both of those are now working. All right, that's going to conclude this video. By the end of this video, you should have your squirt being able to fire a simple projectile at a certain point in his animation. Here's the code one more time. That's the squirt code. And this is the simple projectile code. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.